roll.
Thank you.
Okay, let's call this October 28th meeting to order. And if we could have a roll call, please.
District 1 Supervisor Alejo.
Present.
District 2 Supervisor Phillips.
Here.
District 3 Supervisor Lopez.
Here.
District 4 Supervisor Parker. District 5 Supervisor Adams.
Here.
City of Carmel by the Sea.
Here.
City of Delray Oaks.
Here.
City of Gonzales. City of Greenfield.
Here.
City of King City.
Present.
City of Marina. City of Monterey.
Present.
City of Pacific Grove.
Here.
City of Salinas.
Here.
City of Sand City.
Here.
City of Seaside.
Here.
City of Soledad.
Here.
Ambag.
Here.
Caltrans District 5.
Present.
Monterey Bay Air Resources District.
Present.
Monterey Regional Airport District.
Here.
City of Watsonville. CSUMB. Chair, we do have a quorum. I believe we have 3 absents.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for this meeting. Let's just move to placing the flag on the screen and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Michael. If you join me for our nation's pledge, I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all. And certainly, we won't have a meeting before before the end of the month. So I just wanted to take a moment to honor Veterans Day on November 11th, and a shout out to any staff or many of our board members, community members that may be veterans or active military. We want to just acknowledge you and thank you for your service to our local communities and to our nation. Let's move on to the next item, which is our public comments. If there's any members of the public who would like to address the board for any items not on today's agenda. If there are none, then let's go to item number 3, moving along, our consent agenda. And if people are good with, we just need a motion to
Move consent.
approve.
I just want to make a comment. I just want to,
Sorry, Ms. Kirk.
I'm sorry. I just want to thank TMC staff and everyone that was a part of the group working to find the design group for the Delray Oaks portion of the Fortag trail. We're all excited about the beginning of that coming over the next couple of years. So thank you.
Thank you for that. And certainly that's on our consent agenda, but certainly good progress being made on the Fortag project as indicated.
Lopez will second, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and who was the first again, please?
Potter.
Okay, Mayor Potter, and second by Supervisor Lopez. We have a motion and second. If there's no further discussion on the consent agenda, Madam Clerk, if we could have a roll call, please.
Sure. District 1 Supervisor Alejo.
Aye.
District 2 Supervisor Phillips.
Aye.
District 3 Supervisor Lopez.
Aye.
District 4 Supervisor Parker. District 5 Supervisor Adams.
Aye.
City of Carmel by the Sea.
Aye.
City of Delray Oaks.
Aye.
City of Gonzales. City of Greenfield.
Aye.
City of King City.
Aye.
City of Marina, City of Monterey,
Aye.
City of Pacific Grove,
Aye.
City of Salinas,
Aye.
City of San City,
Aye.
City of Seaside,
Aye.
City of Soledad.
Aye.
Chair, the motion passes with a 14 vote, 3 absence.
Thank you very much for that. Let's go to item number 4 now. This is to present the Transportation Agency Employee of the Quarter to Teresa Wright. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's with great pleasure that I present to Teresa Wright, the Employee of the Quarter. Teresa's been busy working on a number of different things over the past quarter, in addition to her regular public outreach work. She developed the expanded telework policy that you just approved for TAMC employees, which we hope will be a model for other workplaces as we hopefully transition out of the 100% or 90% work from home into a more traditional office. We want to provide opportunities for people to continue to work at home as convenient to them and productive for the office. So appreciate her work on that. She also worked with the team that updated the TAMC website, which I'll show you a little bit about under my report. But we made it ADA accessible. There's a whole new set of rules regarding that. And she took the opportunity not only to make it ADA accessible, but to clean up a lot of old things on the website and to make it just more user-friendly in general. So we're really pleased with that. She also worked with the US 101 South of Salinas project study group that was just getting ready to launch a whole public outreach campaign when we all were given the shelter in place. So she coordinated with the consultant to set up remote outreach activities that actually had a lot of participation and a lot of really useful input. So for that and all the other ongoing activities that Teresa does, the employees have selected her as the Employee of the Quarter. Thank you so much, Teresa, for all your great work.
Thank you.
And congratulations. Teresa, on behalf of our board, as the board chair, I want to take an opportunity to really thank you. We all know in local government, our agencies are only as good as our dedicated employees. And during this pandemic, to see you rise to the occasion and shine and step up to help with new policies for working at home for your colleagues and sprucing up our website, bringing it into the 21st century. And certainly all the good work you do out in the community and on different important projects in the county, I think we're all grateful. So we want to just extend our congratulations and our gratitude for your dedication and really making TAMC shine in our county. So if you want to say a few words, we'd love to hear from you, Teresa.
I would. Thank you so much. I appreciate the recognition, but I also want to say thank you to my colleagues and for the opportunity to work at an agency where the executive leadership team really values each individual and supports and respects the team and the work that the team does. So I just want to say thank you. This is a great organization. This is a great agency, and it's led by a fantastic team. So thank you for the opportunity to be part of the team. Appreciate it.
All right, congratulations then. Okay, Teresa, we're gonna move on now to our next item on the agenda, which is item number 5, to receive an update on state and federal legislative issues and approve the draft 2021 legislative program for distribution to committees for comment. Ms. Watson.
Yes, good morning, Chair. Good morning, board members. I'm Christina Watson, Principal Transportation Planner. And Gus Curry apparently is having some technical difficulties getting in. Gus, are you in there? Can you hear us?
Hi, good morning, Christina. Yes, I am. I apologize. My computer audio isn't working.
Okay, well, Gus, do you want to go ahead and present the state legislative update and our bill list, and then I can present the federal legislative update in the 2021 program?
Yeah, absolutely. So good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Gus Corey, Corey Consulting. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Never had a problem with Zoom before. So the legislative session ended on August 31st, and Governor Newsom had until September 30th to sign legislation. There are a couple bills of interest, a small bill, SB 1231, which was sponsored by TAMC, that enabled TAMC basically to petition the Department of Fish and Wildlife to authorize a permit for the incidental take of the Santa Cruz long-toed salamander, so that we can proceed with trying to address congestion management and safety along State Route 156. And Governor Newsom had signed that bill. Really want to thank TAMC staff in particular. Debbie, Todd did a lot of the homework and groundwork locally to check in with environmental groups to make sure that they were comfortable with what we were doing. Rich Deal and Todd in particular, I kept going back and forth with. And then Supervisor Phillips, I really appreciate his effort in talking to Senator Monning just to make sure that he was comfortable with authoring the legislation to begin with. And then Christina did a ton of work in aggregating just a ton of support letters to show that there was regional support for the legislation. And so that resulted in the governor signing the bill. And this is really significant because we did put in for a funding request of $20 million to the California Transportation Commission through the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program. And the CTC is expected to release its staff recommendations on November 12th. And we're hoping for an allocation vote and the recommendation on the 12th, and then an allocation vote on either December 2nd or 3rd. So the passage of the bill was incredibly timely. Just a couple other quick bills. SB 146 provides an exemption from the Brown Act for purposes of your sustainable community strategy meetings through January 1st of 2023. Senator Wiener had authored SB 288, which provides for a exemption from CEQA through January 1st of 2023 as well, which could assist Monterey Salinas Transit in their Surf Busway project. This basically tries to encourage the delivery of more transit within the existing right-of-way or active transportation projects within the existing right-of-way, and the Governor's Office of Planning and Research would have to sign off on such a project, and it has to be in a plan already. Just two other quick ones. SB 1291. This would suspend the requirement to do the Federal Transportation Improvement Program. We have to do this similarly for the STIP. So this is the FTIP. It's just the federal version of the STIP. And then 1459 Caballero. This bill, you may recall, had started out as an attempt to try to continue the flow of revenue from the Transportation Development Act for public transportation operators. That issue later got addressed through the budget through AB 90. And so Senator Caballero was asking, what else can I use this bill for? And we had suggested, well, the city of Salinas was looking to pursue the relinquishment of a segment of State Route 183. And so the governor wound up signing that bill. And so other issues of interest, the legislature, as you know, had in June passed a state budget that was built upon a large set of assumptions to try to address a $54 billion deficit. And $14 billion of the solution was predicated upon receiving funding from the federal government. And that, as we all know, has not materialized. And so there's some speculation that after the election, Governor Newsom could still call a special session to try to address the issue. He could also choose to wait until the release of the fiscal year 21-22 state budget, which is due by January 10th, and just address the current year and the fiscal year together. So we're keeping a close watch on that. The current class of legislators can meet through November 30th before the new class is sworn in on December 7th. So we've been keeping pretty busy. However, there's been a lot of activity with the administration, and namely the California State Transportation Agency, the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, the California Air Resources Board have been working collectively on climate change. And last September of 2019, Governor Newsom, you may recall, had issued Executive Order N1919, and this was intended to have the administration look at utilizing existing transportation funding programs to address climate change. And while the governor has reiterated that the intention is not to compromise the integrity of the programs, whereas voters have spoken repeatedly about not diverting transportation funding for other purposes, he does want to use funding, namely from the competitive programs, to try to deliver more public transportation projects, more active transportation projects, to try to do away with capacity inducing projects along the state highway system. There's been some concern from several metropolitan planning organizations that the administration wants to have more of the say with respect to how self-help measures are applied. I should say the expenditure plans are applied. So the state wants to have more of a say, basically, over locals putting money on the state highway system. And it's still over 70% of all funding comes from local jurisdictions, the 25 self-help counties in the state. So that's causing a little bit of consternation. TAMC staff and I did participate on a workshop that was hosted by CalSTA on October 20th to articulate some possible solutions for more pragmatic solutions to trying to execute on the executive order. And some of the things that we had been discussing is to try to provide more relief for public transportation with accessing funding, getting a little bit more creative with how we deliver service, and being just a little bit more sensitive to the local partnership that they have, because the state clearly can't fund all of these priorities on its own. And so that's sort of a prelude into the current conversations. The administration is looking to adopt a plan, an investment plan, by the spring of next year. And so we remain active in the conversation so that we have some certainty, this board has some certainty as far as your fiduciary responsibility to your constituents who are paying some of our local taxes and want to know just how those investments are going to be made. And so with that, I'll stop and answer any questions, and that sort of tees up the next conversation with respect to our draft 2021 state legislative program.
Ms. Watson, anything to add on this first part of the presentation?
Yeah, so Gus, you did a good job explaining Executive Order 1919. Do you want to give a brief introduction to Executive Order 7920 related to electric vehicles as well?
Yeah, thank you, Christina. My apologies for forgetting that one. So Governor Newsom on September 23rd had issued N7920, and what this one does is it requires that by 2035 that all vehicle sales, passenger vehicle sales, light duty truck sales be zero emission vehicles. So the governor plans on providing more detail in the release of his fiscal year 21-22 budget with respect to how investments will be made into electric vehicle infrastructure and incentives to try to compel, to make it more affordable. And we're watching this one very closely. This is something that we've talked about during past lobby days, including in 2019 with Governor Newsom when we met with him through the Central Coast Coalition Lobby Day. And it's what's key here is, clearly folks along the Central Coast may not have access to passenger rail service. It may not be pragmatic for them to not use their vehicle. With goods movement, with tourism, with the disadvantaged communities that we have, some folks may not be able to afford a vehicle. And so, we're also talking to Caltrans District 5, who is trying to implement and install more charging stations along the Central Coast as well. So this one bears some watching, but if there's a silver lining to this, I think there's an acknowledgement that vehicle miles traveled is not necessarily a panacea, and that folks are going to still need to drive their cars to conduct their daily business, whether that's taking kids to soccer practice or going to a doctor's appointment and such, where transit can't necessarily fulfill that obligation. And particularly now with the pandemic and social distancing protocols might not make it as ideal for people to utilize the service. And so we're definitely keeping an eye on that. And that's sort of tied into the CalSTA conversation that we had on workshop that we had on October 20th.
Okay, thank you, Gus. Yes, and on the federal level, we have some news as well. So it's been a busy year at the state level for sure. At the federal level, they approved HR 8337, which was the Continuing Appropriations Act, which extended the transportation appropriations through December 11th of this year, and extended the authorizations bill, which is called the Fixing America's Surface Transportation, or FAST Act, through September 30th of next year, which is good to provide some certainty for the next year, at least in terms of authorizations. The short extension of appropriations is harmful for Monterey Salinas Transit, so we're hoping that they will be able to do a real appropriations act in December, or extend it for longer than just a few months in order to fund Monterey Salinas Transit operations. So moving on, the 2021 legislative program will help us to set our framework for discussions with legislators in 2021. The draft that I've provided to you in the packet is very similar to the 2020 program. It continues to focus on funding priorities. It did delete the SB 1231 issue because we were successful in getting that passed. So we're very happy to celebrate that success, and able to replace that item with some items that relate to the executive orders that Gus just explained. So the new items on the program, based on discussion at the executive committee earlier this month, include item 4S, which is support funding for electric vehicle charging infrastructure and rebates for electric vehicle purchases. This is in an effort to make Executive Order 7920 possible for Monterey County to have the charging infrastructure that would support that vision, and to help disadvantaged communities and people with lower incomes to actually acquire the electric vehicles that are going to be mandated in 15 years or so. And then item 5S is actually the same language that was in the federal program last year. We moved it into the state program to talk about replacement of the gas tax with an all electric fleet. The gas tax not only is losing purchasing power already today, but would be viably obsolete in the future. So looking for alternatives to that to fund transportation going forward. So we have a list of examples of what such measures might end up being. And that includes a pay by the mile user fee, or also known as a vehicle miles traveled fee, public-private partnerships, or wholesale energy taxes, which is a concept where all different energy sources are taxed in an equitable way that helps support infrastructure investment in a more of a global, with a more of a global perspective on infrastructure. We also have item 6S is new, which is support funding to increase broadband infrastructure capacity to help bridge the digital divide and to encourage telecommuting to reduce vehicle miles traveled. And I know there are a lot of other elements of broadband infrastructure capacity that are important to our region. We are focused at the Transportation Agency on the aspect of telecommuting and supporting telecommuting, especially during this pandemic. That's become very evident that that is an urgent need. We have other items in here that are repeats from the 2020 program. Let's see, the only other change, I think these are all repeats from the 2020 program. So moving on to the federal program, the new, the only change really is to item 5F. So the Amtrak Coast Starlight was reduced from a daily round trip travel pattern every day from Seattle to LA. Now they only have 3 round trips per week, and it's very hard to understand their schedule. So this is a problem for anyone who wants to have a predictable way of traveling around the state. So we're hoping that the federal government can restore the pre-COVID service. And so that was an edit. And the other change is 3F actually to the federal program, which again goes to that broadband internet access digital divide issue. And I see that Gus has his hand up. Is that to correct something I said?
Yeah. Yeah, no, just to supplement something on the state draft platform. And so we just want to be explicit that we're not endorsing any kind of successor source. This is more just citing what the current conversation has been about what Christina mentioned, the VMT, fee. That would be potentially regressive for folks along the Central Coast because we have to drive further. One other alternative I think that I forgot to put on here, Christina, was the vehicle registration fee, which is already included into SB1. And so we were just wanting to show you a menu of options that have been discussed. It's not stating a preference for one over the other. We would certainly want to talk more to the board about that should these conversations progress further.
Thank you so much for that clarification, Gus. That concludes our report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. A lot to unpack there, but first of all, I wanted to acknowledge Senator Manning for passing our one piece of important legislation. We were trying to honor him today. He was unavailable, but for our December meeting, we're trying to give him some accolades. By then, he will have been termed out of office in the Senate, but we certainly want to thank him. It seems like easy. The governor just signed the bill, but in May, the legislative leaders announced that any bills moving forward had to be pandemic related. So a lot of bills got put to the side. He was able to frame it in a way where that bill was able to move forward. And then there was some squabbling towards the end of the session. So a lot of bills were just procedurally not moving forward. But somehow our team and Senator Monty made sure our bill got through and got a signature from the governor. So I want to really thank him for that, because that allows the work in Castroville, whether it's the Chispa project or the overpass, to be able to have that next critical piece so that those projects could move forward through the process. So we're thankful for that. But I know in terms of next year, I wanted just to comment on the goal of phasing out gas-powered vehicles in 15 years. I mean, that's certainly an issue that's not going to be able to be decided by an executive order. Certainly, I think in the courts needs to be handled through the legislative process. So it's something that the legislature has to handle and codify if it's going to stand up to the legal scrutiny. But certainly a lot of implications for our transportation systems in California, to our biggest funding source, the gas tax that generates billions of dollars each year for transportation. But also the alternative methods that our staff just described are going to be very challenging. It's one thing when you pay a few cents or a couple dollars every time you fill your gas tank, but it's a different thing when you got to pay up a pretty significant amount up front. There's a sticker shock. And during our executive meeting, we reminded people of the last time that was a big issue and a big increase was when Governor Gray Davis was in office, and his recall was launched just by that vehicle license fee going up significantly during that year. So it's not going to be easy answers. Vehicle miles traveled certainly is going to be a concern for rural areas and low income families that sometimes have to travel longer distances to get to work. So those are certainly going to be contentious, big issues that are going to be difficult, I think, the legislature to find easy votes on. And the last thing I just want to mention was the digital divide, because that's been a big issue, obviously, for all local governments, but certainly a lot of attention. There was just a hearing a couple of days ago in the state Senate, and there was one about a week and a half before that in the Assembly. So there's a lot of attention around this issue. But when we talk about the fiber and infrastructure, especially for rural areas, it's a big piece of that is doing that infrastructure, utilizing Caltrans right of ways. And so I think in terms of our transportation system, that's going to be a big one, but also just for our students as they're continuing the virtual learning, but also for our workers who are trying to find ways to work from home. So it's going to be a bigger part of our future in terms of our workforce, but even for our seniors who depend on technology for healthcare and also for staying in touch with family more easily through programs like this one that we're on. So a lot to look forward to in 2021. Any other comments from board members?
Yeah, Supervisor Leo, I wanted to chime in with you on all the work that our people did working with Senator Monning to get that hurdle out of the way that could have stopped the 156 interchange project. And as you mentioned, that project is going in conjunction with the big Chispa project that we need to get more affordable housing. So we really do appreciate that. And I agree with you that digital divide is something that you've kind of led the charge in that our county feels real strongly about. So thank you.
Thank you. I got some hand raised, so I'm going to go to that. Thank you, Supervisor Phillips. Let's go to Supervisor Lopez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to reiterate the point that staff and you both made on vehicle miles traveled. I've read several articles coming out of different universities, actually papers, just outlining the fact that most vehicle miles traveled plans that have been proposed are inequitable. And as we try to move California forward to make sure that we're not putting additional weights on the most disadvantaged communities that we represent and that are part of California, I'm concerned that any proposal that comes forward should be looked at through that lens. And so I would just ask that staff make sure to push that question anytime legislation is proposed or that some sort of draft proposal comes out, because for us being such a large community in terms of landmass, I can think about communities like San Lucas, Lockwood, even Parkfield, who have to sometimes commute more than an hour to access specific resources, grocery stores. Milk for some of those communities is at minimum a half hour away. So when you think about those challenges, I just want to make sure that these communities aren't overduly burdened just because of the fact that they live rurally. Oftentimes they live there because that is the cheapest housing where they can do the work that they do, which is feeding the country. So I just want to make sure that that stays part of the lens that we as TAMC use to analyze legislation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All good points, Supervisor Lopez. Let's go to Supervisor Parker and then Mayor Labar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so just a comment on the greenhouse gas reduction and as it relates to vehicle miles traveled. I think it's a real prompt to us to make sure that we do everything we can to ensure a jobs housing balance. It's challenging in the rural areas when you have a rural workforce. How do they get to the grocery store and how do they get to schools? But there are a lot of jobs that are in more developed areas, and it's just a real prompt to us to make sure that we are looking at that infill development, possibly transit-oriented development, but really focusing, building housing where the jobs are, and housing that our workforce can afford. And we have a pretty low paid workforce, so it's a challenge. And I think people are focusing more on that now, but it's going to take work. And then related to that, I had a question. I know there are a lot of unknowns with the governor's executive order, but his desire to focus transportation funds towards greenhouse gas reductions. Might that help us? I see we have a couple of legislative goals related to increasing the funding for transit-oriented development and active transportation. Could that potentially benefit us in that way?
Yeah, if I might, that's the angle that we've been talking to the administration about as they go around and talk to us. We've been trying to encourage them to think about how can they help us to reach these goals, as opposed to how can they require us to reach these goals. Because what we found so often is that a trail or bikeway or sidewalk project gets as much scrutiny as a highway project in certain ways. And transit requirements and funding can be even more difficult than highway and road funding. And so what would really be helpful for them would not be for them to say, don't do this, but to say, here's how we can make it quicker and easier for you to do that. And so I agree with you on that approach. And I think there's a lot of new people working at the state level on this issue. And so there's an education process we're working on.
Thank you. And then I think I know the answer to this, but I notice in the federal goals, we're asking that NEPA be replaced with CEQA. I imagine that has to do with the challenge of the state and the federal people involved in doing that work. And I also imagine that CEQA tends to be a higher bar environmentally. So like the work of NEPA is being done by CEQA, but could you just speak to why that's our goal?
Yeah, yes, I can try. So this is something that we've had in our program for several years because, as you say, CEQA is a lot stronger of an environmental law than NEPA is for California, with the exception of, I think there are a couple of exceptions with historic properties and maybe parks. There are a couple of things where NEPA is stronger than CEQA, but CEQA is much more time consuming in terms of developing a environmental review than the NEPA document. So the concept here is to streamline the process of environmental review. And that's already happening at some level for some projects where Caltrans is the NEPA designee for projects, and that's helpful. But having that substitution enabled by federal law would facilitate that and make project delivery faster and easier.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Gus, I know you want to chime in here, but I'll let you go at the end. We got a few of our board members. Maybe you could address some of them at the end. Let's go to Mayor Labar, then Ed Smith, then Scott Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Few comments regarding the digital divide and telecommuting. If we would consider in our conversations with our representatives at the state and federal level to see if there's an appetite to look at providing these tech companies either mitigation credits if they expand their service, like upgrade our T1 lines, for example, all the way down to King City, or put in server farms to increase that ability, because it's not just the pipeline, it has to have a stronger pump at certain areas to keep everything flowing. And that might be a way to incentivize the private sector to invest more into these rural areas to bring these internet services to full capacity. Charging stations, it might be something now we have to look into talking with all of our jurisdictions on incorporating at least in the basic plans where charging stations should be at in new developments. So we can have infrastructure, the underground already in place, the ability to connect to electricity quickly. And that would have to be also incorporated into the energy use needs of those developments, because those will be significant increases. And then lastly, on the energy tax, I absolutely agree with Supervisor Alejo and Lopez on the VMT would be damaging. I will continue to advocate for a tax at the wholesale level on all energy forms. I believe that is what creates a permanent fix. The nexus between energy use and infrastructure and an American's ability to live their life is just intrinsically combined. They'll never be separated. And that would provide a permanent and stable revenue source for all of our infrastructure needs. And at the same time, it would be equitable because everyone pays for what they use. And if someone uses more, they pay more. And that's, to me, is a fair way to go. So I absolutely encourage any kind of conversations towards a permanent fix to our infrastructure funding needs, and would really like any opportunity to expand on that. I know if you heard a lot, Gus, and I very much appreciate if you hear my rants over and over. But thank you, Chair. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Let's go to Ed Smith, then Scott Davis, then Carl Sador.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to say thank you for all of those that worked so hard to push the legislation through. Gus, you've given us a good update, and I really appreciate all you do on the work in Sacramento and behind the scenes, but we're delivered with much more information with you being in the role that you're sitting in. I want to point out the Executive Order 1919. And as I read it yesterday and just reread it again this morning, it's loaded with high bars and potential challenges for our agency and for our region. I want to point out one thing that's in the executive order, and it's ironic that it's the very last thing. It's item 4C, and I'm just going to read it, and this has an implication to our region, especially construction vehicles, agriculture vehicles, with the pursuit to get to zero emissions. 4C, consider strengthening existing or adopting new regulations to achieve the necessary greenhouse gas reductions from within the transportation sector. I'm already hearing from some folks in Monterey that are in the construction world that are saying that there's a very high bar and a very rapidly advancing deadline for vehicle replacements for diesel vehicles, emissions, and fleets of construction and agriculture vehicles that is going to be extremely difficult to achieve. So I look forward to learning more about it and how we might be able to look towards advocating for some legislation for how this is going to impact us in the coming years for the goals of 2030. They've already started with fleet vehicles that have to be replaced within a very short period of time. So it's going to be a financial impact to be able to achieve that. So just want to learn more about this. And I think there's some opportunities for us to really be aware of this. Instead of this coming to us, I want to be proactive and see if we can't learn to understand it a little bit more. One example, one small contractor who has 7 vehicles. They're very specialized vehicles that are needed for construction, sewage, and cleanup. He's been notified that he's not going to be re-registering them. He will not be able to re-register, and they're vehicles that are akin to an F-350 diesel because the engines are different engines, the emission controls are restricted. So he's looking at a capital investment of nearly $500,000 to replace the vehicles within the next 2 years. So we have some hurdles to be able to see how this is going to play out. So I look forward to learning more about it.
Thank you, Ed. All very good points and good insights of how this might impact particular instances in our county.
Yeah.
Let's go to Scott Davis and Carl Sadoric.
Thank you, Supervisor Alejo. I just wanted to echo what you and Supervisor Lopez said about the vehicle miles traveled and the impacts that it's going to have on. I don't like to use not just for our rural areas, but also right here in like the city of Salinas, the area that I represent, that you represent, Supervisor Alejo. A lot of our not only work in ag, but a lot of them work in hospitality industry, and that industry is over in the peninsula area. And as to what Supervisor Parker said, I believe she's absolutely on point with mixed communities, but having mixed use communities and having jobs right there so that people can access those jobs by walking or using multimodal means of transportation, sans vehicles, right? We have to rethink about how we move forward in a way that's sustainable, not only for our climate and the world we live in, but also what's sustainable for people to live the life that they'd like to live, given the financial circumstances that they may have and what we're doing as communities moving forward. Having said that, jobs, just to have a job in the area, it has to be a high paying job. And what I've noticed around at least the city of Salinas is we don't have a lot of high paying jobs here. We have jobs, but not high paying jobs that allow people to sustain themselves and be able to afford a house. And so it's kind of a point, it's almost a paradox, where do you bring in how do you get the high paying jobs to come in, or do you decrease the cost of housing? And that's an extremely huge challenge. And it's something that is going to take a long time to figure out, unfortunately. But I think TAMC is on the right track with bringing in like the rail and these different options so that people can have access to the higher paying jobs in the Silicon Valley. But we just have to be careful about gentrification moving forward. So again, I think we're all on point on what needs to happen. It's just a matter of getting there, and how do we get there is the big hurdle. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Scott. Let's go to Carl Sidoric.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to speak a little bit to the electric zero emission power stations. When we speak about stations, and as Director Labar spoke about developing standards for infrastructure, we need to also be concerned about storage of power and having the ability to store, 72 hours to a week's worth of power as PG&E and other utilities turn power off when the wind gets high, when wildfires come through, as more and more climate change related disasters occur. We can't be dependent upon a power grid that is increasingly undependable. So I've seen peers of mine who've invested heavily in the transit industry in electric vehicles grind to a halt during these longer term power outages. And we don't want to see that happen with personal vehicles as well. So just be aware of power storage needs as we move forward.
Very good point, Carl, for us to contemplate. It had been raised before. Thank you. Anyone else? Any board members? And we'll go to Gus Corey and Christina again. I don't see any other hands raised, so let's take it back to Gus. I know you wanted to say something earlier, Gus, and Christina, any closing comments on this?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to be respectful of your time, but this is such a big topic. I just wanted to reiterate and give a little bit of context. The Central Coast Coalition actually drafted a letter, and we could circulate that and have the board take a look. But a lot of folks were kind of taken aback with the executive order. And so what our region tried to do is provide some solutions. So as Member Reed mentioned, we're trying to be proactive. We want to show the administration that we want to have a partnership. We are a smaller county, and even though we have a sales tax measure, what we generate is disproportionate to our needs. And we're not San Francisco, we're not Los Angeles, we don't have the density, the jobs housing imbalance that Supervisor Parker mentioned. These are all things that we've brought up. And so just a couple, of the suggestions that we had was, COVID, for better or worse, it's been a nightmare, but if there's any remote silver lining to it, is it's proven that telecommuting does work. We did ask for more, credits, incentives, if we're going to convert over to electric vehicles, making investments into passenger rail, more bus on shoulder, shipping more goods via rail instead of truck to try to ease congestion and improve safety within, the various arterials along the Central Coast. I think the one thing that's sort of scary for us is that VMT is being used as the tool instead of a tool to address greenhouse gas emissions, and it's not necessarily, the case. I mean, if you drove a zero emission vehicle, you're not emitting greenhouse gas, right? So we still need to be conscientious of where the public has to go. And so I think this conversation is very instructive and helpful, that our messaging appears to be, very consistent with previous discussions that we've had, as far as making sure that we're not at a disadvantage. And just one quick note, when SB1 was going through the process, one thing that we did recommend was implementation of a vehicle registration fee, which is progressive. A portion can be written off. The more expensive your car, the more you pay, but there's actually half the cars in the state are worth less than $5,000, and 87.5% of all vehicles pay $50 or less annually, and that's basically the equivalent of what the 12-cent gas tax increase was. So we are trying to provide more pragmatic solutions, because I think we all agree with the objective as far as providing, wanting clean air and clean water and addressing congestion, but we just don't want to get left behind with being able to access any state funds going forward, especially since we have a lot of communities of need. And so I appreciate your indulgence, and I'm happy to discuss more at a prospective executive committee as we look forward to finalizing our 2021 platform. Thank you so much.
Ms. Watson, any other last comments on this?
Yes, thank you so much. This conversation has been very helpful. I think I have some direction forward in terms of making a few updates and revisions to this draft program. I will then be bringing this program to the Rail Policy Committee on November 2nd, the Bicycle Pedestrian Facilities Advisory Committee that Wednesday, and the Technical Advisory Committee meeting that Thursday, so all next week. Quick turnaround. And we had our interagency meeting with MST staff and County of Monterey staff to talk about how we can make sure that we're coordinated on our priorities. So I will be adding an item to the federal program to support COVID relief for MST as well. And we will be bringing this back to the executive committee in January with a final draft to discuss and finalize and recommend adoption by this board in January 2021. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Watson. And it sounds like we're going to be very busy next year, just on the legislative side at all levels. So thank you to Gus, and really thank you, Ms. Watson, for really keeping us abreast of all these issues at all levels. So you've done a really good job. So with that, we will.
Mr. Chair, if I may interrupt,
Yes.
I'm just looking at the agenda, and the agenda item is to receive and then approve the draft. Are we changing that? Because Christina's going to be bringing it back in January. Pardon? That is the action. So we are going to approve this draft. You may bring back a revised draft. If we are going to approve it, I think we should just make sure nobody in the public has any comments.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. Any members of the public who would like to comment on our legislative, state and federal legislative issues and on the draft? Do you want to check if there's any hands raised? I don't see any hands raised. Okay. Then if I could have a motion, if you could state your name, who's making the motion, and the second.
LeBar, motion to approve.
Okay, got a motion.
Smith, second.
Okay, it's Smith, second. Okay, if there's no further discussion, let's do a roll call vote, Madam Clerk.
District 1, Supervisor Alejo.
Aye.
District 2, Supervisor Phillips.
Aye.
District 3, Supervisor Lopez.
Aye.
District 4, Supervisor Parker.
Aye.
District 5, Supervisor Adams.
Aye.
City of Carmel by the Sea.
Aye.
City of Delray Oaks.
Aye.
City of Gonzales.
Aye.
City of Greenfield.
Aye.
City of King City.
Aye.
City of Marina. City of Monterey.
Aye.
City of Pacific Grove.
Aye.
City of Salinas. City of Salinas,
Aye, sorry.
City of Sand City,
Aye.
City of Seaside,
Aye.
City of Soledad.
Aye.
Chair, the motion passes with 16-0.
Thank you for that unanimous vote. Let's move on now. And thank you, Ms. Ryman, for that little prompt reminder, keeping us on task. We're on number 6, receive a presentation and update on the Surf Busway and Rapid Transit Project. Ms. Jacobson.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. I'm very excited to share with you an update on the Surf Busway and Bus Rapid Transit Project. So yeah, on the line with us, we have MST, of course, and we also have members of the Kimley Horn Design Consultant Team. So we'll be able to have some discussion at the end of the presentation. So Monterey Salinas Transit is serving as the lead agency for this project, but we're working very closely together as the busway is in the TAMC-owned Monterey Branch Line rail right-of-way. And additionally, we have the Kimley Horn and Associates as the design consultant. So before I dive into the project, the Monterey Branch Line corridor has been through a long history of studies, beginning with passenger rail studies as early as the 1990s that I'm aware of. A significant step was TAMC's purchase of the Monterey Branch Line in 2003. And in 2009, TAMC explored rail options of the corridor, and light rail was selected as the locally preferred alternative. Light rail, however, was deemed too expensive and it didn't have the transit ridership to support investment, which led to the Federal Transit Administration's suggestion to pursue bus rapid transit. And so in 2014, the TAMC board supported bus rapid transit as an interim solution. In 2016, Monterey County voters approved Measure X, which included identification of the Highway 1 traffic relief busway on the ballot. And in 2018, Monterey Salinas Transit concluded the feasibility study of bus on shoulder operations on State Route 1 and the Monterey Branch Line. And at the conclusion of that study, Monterey Salinas Transit determined that utilizing the Monterey Branch Line would be the most feasible and cost-effective approach. So that leads us to 2019 when MST initiated the Surf Busway and Bus Rapid Transit project. And here today in 2020, the project is actively in the preliminary engineering and environmental analysis phase. So the current phase of work has about 1.45 million of Measure X funds for it, but the total project cost is estimated to be 52 million at this point in time. There's up to 15 million in Measure X identified and some of MST's local partnership funds and federal funds. We're looking at future fund sources, including the state's Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program or the US DOT's Capital Investment Grant Program to help fill the funding gap for construction. So the corridor itself, the Surf Busway and Bus Rapid Transit project runs approximately 6 miles, formally beginning at the Monterey Transit Exchange area and entering the TAMC rail right-of-way at the Del Monte Boulevard and Palm Avenue in the city of Marina. The busway is envisioned as a 2-lane bus-only corridor paralleling the rail line and providing congestion relief to Highway 1, which parallels the corridor. The Surf corridor has one proposed stop identified at the 5th Street station, is what we call it, which is envisioned as a multimodal transit center on MST's parcel in the former Fort Ord. Then the buses will continue in the Monterey Branch Line corridor, exiting around California and Fremont and Monterey in that interchange area. So overall project objectives include improving air quality and reducing greenhouse gas emissions, increasing transit use and reducing traffic on Highway 1, enhancing mobility and improving bicycle trail connections, improving travel time reliability for transit users, and improving transit connections. So the project, like I mentioned, it recently reached the design milestone of the 15% design plans. Throughout the design process, one of the primary goals has been to preserve the railroad tracks for future use, while also keeping the overall project costs minimal. So while the majority of the design of the busway facility is in the Monterey Branch Line right-of-way, there's a couple other key design areas that we've been working through, which include the entry point into the right-of-way at Palm and Del Monte and Marina, the 5th Street Station in Marina, and the California Fremont Monterey intersection area in Sand City and Seaside area. As far as environmental documentation, the project kickstarted the CEQA process with the notice of preparation released in mid-August and closing in mid-September. Project team has also initiated coordination with the Federal Transit Administration. Key partners for coordination on the project include the U.S. Department of Transportation and Federal Transit Administration, as FTA would act as the federal agent for NEPA purposes. There's a small sliver of right-of-way in the Caltrans property, and we go under a couple of Caltrans overcrossings. So we're working with Caltrans. There's also the California Coastal Commission, and of course our jurisdictions here in the county, including the County of Monterey, the City of Marina, Sand City, California State Parks, and Seaside. The project's environmental next steps. So we anticipate that the public review draft of the EIR will be available in spring of 2021, with the final EIR out next summer 2021. As TAMC would be a responsible agency, there would be necessary approvals from the TAMC Board and of course the MST Board in summer 2021. And then the NEPA review and approval process would follow after the CEQA process is completed. This here is an overall project schedule. So at this point in time, we're in the preliminary engineering and design phase and environmental compliance. 2022-23 is when we anticipate the final engineering and design to be completed, with construction hopefully starting in 2024. And our current estimate for operation is the start of 2027. Regarding public outreach, as you may imagine, the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted the anticipated outreach process. However, the team is working to develop a virtual public outreach program. And actually, as part of the outreach program, we've developed some video simulations, the first of which I will transition to show you. And hopefully it'll help provide a big picture of some of the design elements of the project, and then we can open it up for discussion. So I'm gonna smoothly transition to show you the video simulation here. Oh. Uh-oh. Fire alarm. So I hope you enjoy the video simulation. And this is at the entry point in the city of Marina. So that's the Marina Palm and Del Monte enter into the TAMC right of way. And this showcases one of the key bike improvements, which is an extension of Beach Range Road, so that cyclists could continue seamlessly along that side of the trail. Now we're cruising in the busway. Here showcases a connection to the Fortag Regional Trail Project. And that's the future State Parks campground area. Now we're flying past the traffic. And here, the bus is turning off to connect with the proposed Fifth Street multimodal transit station. And this multimodal station is going to be able to service both buses that are using the surf corridor and other local and regional lines.
Is that behind the VA clinic?
Yeah, in that region. And this is the TAMC owned property here. Now the bus is back into the surf corridor, and this is another bicycle extension of Beach Range Road to connect on this side of the project. And here the bus is going to exit the rail corridor through a proposed roundabout, which will allow it to make a left turn without having to cross uncontrolled traffic. And then showing here is a design that we're considering with connecting back into the rail corridor all the way down to Playa and California. So at this point, I'll open it up to questions. And before I do that, if Peter wants to say hello so they can see who Peter Meyerhofer, the Kimley Horn project manager, is. And I believe the Lauren Jumanin is also on the line. And we have Lisa, Michelle, and Carl from MST. We can all, as the project team, help answer questions.
Wow, very impressive, Ms. Jacobson, to just have the visualization of what this might look like from a bird's eye view. I mean, it's I think for all the board and the public, it's just really good to have that model to benefit from. Carl, did you want to mention this has to do with transit? I want to give you a chance to weigh in and speak to this before we open it up for questions from the board.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Really, for MST, we think this is the game changer that will actually move people out of their private vehicles and onto transit when, at Monterey County still does not have any high occupancy vehicle lanes. This would provide a lane specifically for MST vehicles. And as you see in the simulation during high traffic periods where average commute speeds can be under 10 miles per hour, for those of you who experienced that pre-COVID and actually on some of the weekends now as we occur, our buses will be able to bypass that and people will be able to arrive at their destinations faster using transit. And that will be a first for this region. And we think that will actually get more people using transit, reducing vehicle miles traveled, reducing congestion and the attendant pollution. And people talk about greenhouse gas emissions from traffic congestion, but there's also oil and brake dust particles and tire particles that get left on the roadways and wash into the bay after winter storms. So it's not only good for the air, but also good for the health of our bay if we can reduce auto traffic congestion along Highway 1. So I'll leave it at that and let you get on to other questions.
Great, Carl. Thank you. Certainly a great partnership between our agency and MST. Thank you for that. Let's open for questions on the board. I got Mary Adam first and then Jane Parker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And thank you for this great presentation. The surf music alone was worth the investment in the time of watching it. It was really great. But I did have two questions. And the first is, when you showed the stop where people would get into the state park, where the state park kiosk is that the only entry? Will people be able to rely on this mode of transportation to get to the state park? Or will there be some other way where they can drive in and park and that sort of thing? That's question number one. And then question number two goes again to the parking question. wanting to ensure that there is plenty of parking. I'm sure you, all right, you can tell me the answer is yes, at all of the various spots where people can get on and off.
Handle this. So who's our spokesperson on this? We didn't, as a team.
We didn't decide.
So I will go ahead, Peter.
I can maybe take a shot at the first half, the first question. State Park access is going to remain accessible at the 8th Street overpass. So the BRT buses are actually now going to be running under that overpass, so there won't be any conflict there. Future plans of the state park there, they're going to be doing some campground facility expansions further south. And their plan is to convert that existing First Street connection underpass as their main vehicular route there to Beach Range Road and to that future campground. As you saw in the video, our 5th Street underpass is going to remain as it is today, just bicycle, 11-foot bike lane, as well as our BRT lane. There will not be general vehicle use through that underpass. So for the state park facilities, it's going to be the 8th Street overpass and the 1st Street underpass. So.
Thank you.
Okay, Jane Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I want to thank Madeline Jacobson and the team for coming and presenting a lot of this information at Hot Topics, about a month ago. So I got a little sneak preview, but this is really so valuable for my supervisorial district because so many of the people who work on the South Peninsula in hospitality and retail live in Seaside and Marina, and this will be a big help when it comes to commute time and options for getting to and from work in an efficient and pleasant way. Also, as we all know, there's quite a bit of commute traffic flow and other traffic flow between the peninsula and Salinas, and this is in that transit corridor to create the possibility again of a smooth, quick trip between Salinas, where a lot of people who work on the peninsula live. So between Salinas and the peninsula and vice versa. So that it's a complex and time-consuming process, but I think this bus rapid transit option will really serve our community well in all of the ways. The commuting, the greenhouse gases, the general, that comes with congestion. It'll really serve our community well until there is I know we're still planning on rail, which is an eager process. So I'm glad that we have this very effective solution that can be implemented sooner. And I'm really excited about the benefits for, my district in particular, since I do extend all the way over to Salinas, but just for the community in general to have these kinds of really good options. To build on, the already good MST service that we have, but this ability to bypass the slow flow of traffic and really make sure that riding transit is an even better option than riding in your own vehicle. So thank you.
For sure. Good point, Supervisor Parker.
If I might respond to that, Chair.
Yes, go
ahead. Supervisor Parker makes a great point, and I want to clarify that, just because we define the project as between Marina and Seaside Sand City, any MST route that currently travels along the Highway 1 corridor will be using this lane to bypass traffic. So there are benefits to our many passengers who start their trips in Salinas on our line 20, our busiest line currently between Salinas, Marina, and Monterey. Those riders and passengers, people who live in Salinas, will be able to take advantage of this as well. And as we are rebuilding post-COVID, we're looking at how we rebuild our lines. We're looking at maybe options to see if it's possible to provide a one-seat ride on a trip from the LSL corridor that continues all the way through to the what would become the line 20 route all the way down the coast into Monterey. So this provides us a lot of opportunities to use the same resources more efficiently and travel a lot faster.
That is very cool, Carl. I didn't realize that. I'm glad you pointed that out.
I like to be called Cool Carl. And I tried to do that like you, Jane, but I can't get a grasp of it. So.
All right. Thank you for that, Cool Carl. That will be your new name here. Let's go to Bill Sable, and then I got Greg Cawthorn after that.
Okay, thank you. Well, this isn't directly related to airport stuff. I think it's good for our county, and I fully support it and will reflect that with my board. I had a question for Carl. A practical one is my observation of traffic on Highway 1. It seems to really get congested all the way up to even the Monterey County border. Is there any plan to coordinate with the Santa Cruz Transit folks or that county? And are you going to expand the schedules that lead into this from the Salinas area so that we don't have a demand for substantial amount of parking of personal vehicles at the Marina station, and we don't create a continuous backup on Highway 1 north of Marina?
Yeah, so currently the BRT, Bus Rapid Transit Vision, that MST has currently in place is within our county borders, and we want to expand, as I mentioned, Bus Rapid Transit from we have the Jazz, now the Surf, and then we have the a multimodal corridor along Imjin, serving into Salinas. We plan to extend through there, and then working with the city of Salinas to identify grants, planning grants for an LSL corridor, and then looking at ways to speed buses through the South County cities along Highway 101, and in making improvements there, maybe bus on shoulder, long distance. Santa Cruz and their rail line, they are still trying to figure out what they want to do with their rail line. They have a very strong contingent that wants to convert that to strictly bicycle only, rail to trail, versus allowing buses. And the Santa Cruz RTC is continuing to study that and examine that and have community meetings. And we are farther ahead. I do know that their transit operator and their elected officials are rooting for us to succeed with this so that they can show their community how bikes and transit can coexist in a corridor like this. Because right now there seems to be a disagreement that it has to be one or the other, from my understanding. So that's where we are today.
Okay, thank you, Carl. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Let's go to Mr. Hawthorne.
Yes, thank you. That video is great. I really appreciate being able to watch that and see the actual bus, and it was very interesting. But it did not go through Sand City. Are we going to continue the line that goes through Sand City and then comes out to Contra Costa, or does it end before you really start to go through Sand City? Carl, probably be the
There
guy
we go. Currently, the corridor ends at Playa and California, near the beginning of the Edgewater transit, where the current MST Edgewater transit exchange is. So we're looking at building some additional stops for that corridor, and then our routes would continue on surface streets as they do now, either down Del Monte or Fremont in California, as they currently operate.
Okay.
And Lisa, do you have any other ideas or thoughts on that? I don't want to get too far down the long-term plans, because I know there's some thoughts about Sand City.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Actually, I was going
Save
to
me.
interject. No, you're fine. You've got the first part of it correct. What we found when we took a look at the traffic conditions and the backups is that the biggest bang for our buck in terms of avoiding that commute traffic as well as, the vacation traffic is, in this corridor that we've described. That being said, utilization of the full branch line makes a lot of sense for us. And as we are going through the environmental documentation, we are also including from Playa to Contra Costa as in a sort of a programmatic big picture type of a way, although the project itself, when it goes to construction, will not include from Playa to Contra Costa, although we contemplate it in the long term, only because, again, we can get the travel time savings on our system between the areas that are congested. Once we get onto surface streets at Playa, there is not as much travel time savings going through the rail corridor at this moment in time, but we want to take a look at it for the future.
Thank you.
Okay, Debbie Hale wanted to weigh in.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. With regards to the connection with the Santa Cruz corridor, I just wanted to add that our network integration study for rail service is looking at how to best connect between Monterey and Santa Cruz. And what Santa Cruz is looking at now is a bus on shoulder concept along Highway 1 in part of their county, in the part where the highway gets wider. I believe it's from Watsonville into maybe Cabrillo area. And so the buses could continue north instead of going into Marina, or in addition to going into Marina, along Highway 1 and get then on a bus rapid transit lane or on the shoulder in Santa Cruz County. And then we'll have a chance to present to this board concepts for a longer term light rail that would extend then from Monterey to Santa Cruz. So lots of discussions in the work as to how to improve that trip up to Santa Cruz, but they are in the midterm and longer term scenarios.
Thank you for that, Ms. Hale. Any other board members? Seeing none, let's open up for members of the public who would want to comment on this report on the Surf Busway and Rapid Transit project. I don't see any hands raised. I don't know if staff see any hands raised from the public.
Mr. Chair, can I circle back to Supervisor Adams' question?
Yes.
About parking?
Yes.
Just to round it out, the main area that we're identifying new parking for is at the 5th Street station. The Marina Transit Exchange has very minimal existing parking. And the south end at the Playa area also doesn't have exclusive transit access parking identified. And I don't know the number of spaces that we have proposed for the 5th Street station area, but that would be the primary area where you could park and then hop on the bus.
Great, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna keep moving on to this. Thank you, Ms. Jacobson, for your presentation on this, and keep it going. Good progress being made on that. No action was needed on this project, so we'll just deem that report received. We'll go to item number 7 now, the Prunedale Improvement Project right-of-way rescission.
Good morning, Chair Alejo and members of the board. This is Todd Muck, the Deputy Executive Director. Brandy Ryder, who is the project manager for Caltrans for this effort, had a scheduling conflict and isn't going to be able to make the presentation this morning. So I'll go ahead and handle the item.
Great, thank you.
I'm going to share a map of the rescission area. If you all can see that in bright yellow. It is property that is part of the Prunedale bypass that was originally designed in the 60s and 70s, and right-of-way was purchased in the 70s and maybe early 80s along the blue dashed line in northern Monterey County. And as funding options to build the bypass disappeared in the 70s, and then the first sales tax measure for transportation in Monterey County, Measure B, was passed in the 80s, but then was rejected through the courts. Funding for the bypass was not viable. So the Transportation Agency proceeded with the Prudendale Improvement Project, which we've all benefited from, with the removal of the left turns across the existing alignment of Highway 1 and new overcrossings. So with that and the understanding that the bypass is no longer viable, the Transportation Agency made several attempts for legislation to allow us to sell the surplus property and maintain it in Monterey County. And unfortunately, they did not make it through the legislative process. And Caltrans had worked with us as partners throughout that process, and they doggedly pursued an administrative option that we can do it without special legislation. And this item today is the result of that. This item today is a part of a 60-day public review process that is required. And then Caltrans will submit the rescission of this dash blue area to the California Transportation Commission in January with a request to rescind the route. Part of this is the Transportation Agency adopting some recommendations for alternative routes where we could utilize the funds that are generated from the sale of the surplus property. And we're recommending that the State Route 156 corridor and the US 101 south of Salinas corridor be our designated projects for any funding from the surplus. We are anticipating somewhere in the nature of $10 million as surplus from the sale of this property. And that will probably be a while, as after approval from the California Transportation Commission, the Caltrans will start the process of actually surplusing the properties. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Todd. Certainly, TAMC made an effort to carry legislation to keep the resources within the county. I authored that bill originally, then Caballero at least a couple times, if not 3 times. So I'm glad that our staff and Caltrans staff were open to trying to find other ways where we might make that goal of the legislation a reality through administrative avenues. So I want to commend staff for that. And if being able to keep every dollar possible for other transportation projects within our county really, I think, makes a lot of sense. And it was what happened in other pieces of legislation that were previously approved by other governors. It just wasn't viable at this particular time for us. But now we're able to advance this other alternative route forward. So I see Supervisor Phillips wants to speak first.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I really appreciate Caltrans sticking with us and working with us on this. I went up and testified twice, once when you were sponsoring the legislation and one other time with Senator Caballero, but and both times we got nixed by the governor's veto. But I think it's important that we keep that money locally. And I think the 2 projects, 156 and then down there where there's so many problems down there at Spence Road, I think is another critical area. I feel a little old because I backed out of buying a house on Pazante in 1973 because they said the bypass was coming right at the corner of the property, and that was a few years ago, 1973. So I think this, I really do appreciate Caltrans working with us on this and other projects. Thank you.
Thanks for that little history lesson there, Supervisor Phillips.
Yeah, I'm becoming the old historian in these. Lou Calcagno turned it over to me, I think so.
All right, other board members. Okay, let's open up for members of the public. Any comments on this item? I got Grant Leonard first.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. I have a question about this item. I realize it makes a lot of sense to have the funds to benefit other future projects. But I'm wondering if this land could also potentially be used as environmental mitigation for the 156 project or other Caltrans projects. If instead of selling it, it was converted to a permanent scenic easement, if that could offset the future environmental mitigation requirements for other projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, staff want to respond to that?
Sure. This property was evaluated as potential habitat mitigation, and it did not meet the requirements or the needs for the 156 project and other Caltrans projects in the area. So that is part of the reason that Caltrans District 5 staff support rescinding the route and surplusing the property and utilize the revenues in other projects. So they did already do the evaluation for habitat and determined it not being viable.
Thank you, Todd. Any other members of the public? Okay, seeing none, brings us back to the board. And I think we need action on this to adopt the US 101 South to Salinas Corridor Improvement Project and Route 156 West Corridor Project as transportation projects included in the Monterey County Local Alternative Transportation Improvement Program. Motion and a second.
This is Phillips. Move approval.
Okay,
Second,
moved by
City Council, Salinas.
okay, moved by John Phillips, second by Scott Davis. Thank you. So, Madam Clerk, if we could call the roll.
Works for
District 1 Supervisor Alejo.
Aye.
District 2 Supervisor Phillips.
Aye.
District 3 Supervisor Lopez.
Aye.
District 4 Supervisor Parker.
Aye.
District 5 Supervisor Adams.
Aye.
City of Carmel by the Sea.
Aye.
City of Delray Oaks.
Aye.
City of Gonzales. City of Gonzales. City of Greenfield.
Aye.
City of King City.
Aye.
City of Marina. City of Monterey.
Aye.
City of Pacific Grove.
Aye.
City of Salinas.
Aye.
City of Sand City. City of Seaside.
Aye.
City of Soledad.
Aye.
Chair, the motion passes 14-0.
Thank you also for that unanimous vote. And just for the record, that there will be a 60-day public review period as part of this process. And Caltrans is scheduled to submit the rescission request to the California Transportation Commission in January 2021. That's the next steps on that. So let's go to item number 8. And this is just to receive reports from our transportation providers. And we'll start with Caltrans Director's Report.
Hi, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm Scott Eads here, Deputy Director for Transportation Planning and Local Assistance, giving the report today. So first, just want to highlight and appreciate the staff highlight on the SURF project. It's a really interesting, creative, and potentially transformative project. And we look forward to working with the implementing agencies as this project moves forward. So, and we do know that there's a location there at Highway 1 where we will be needing to coordinate to make sure that it works correctly on our side. A couple other things I want to highlight is one, that there's been a call for projects that's been out for a while under our Highway Safety Improvement Program. It's a federal aid program that looks to improve safety at spot locations. By and large, the application process plays out through the local jurisdiction staff, and then our local assistance branch will work to process those requests and manage that funding program. So just want to note that the applications were previously due back in October. The deadline has been extended to November 2nd, primarily due to COVID and wildfires and other recent events that have caused some need for additional time for making sure those applications get completed. And then the other thing I want to highlight is that this is the first ever National Pedestrian Safety Month. So October 2020, first ever. And just a couple of things I want to highlight about pedestrian safety. Pedestrian deaths have increased nationwide over the last decade, sadly. And that in California, pedestrians are 37 times more likely to be injured in a collision than any other roadway user. And that between 2008 and 2017, pedestrian-related incidents accounted for 19% of all collisions, resulting in death or serious injury. And at least 2 pedestrians or cyclists lose their lives on California transportation system every day. So clearly an important issue. It's an important area of focus for Caltrans, and I know your local jurisdictions as well as TAMC. So important time to stop and think about this area of focus. That is all I have to report today. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Caltrans? If not, thank you, Mr. Eads. So we'll move to Bill Sable, Monterey Airport.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the opportunity for this shameless advertising for the Monterey Regional Airport. But I wanted to share that we are very conscious of reducing vehicle miles traveled. And as part of that, we are working very hard to expand the number of departures out of Monterey to places that people need to go or they need to connect. And to that end, we've gotten American to provide a second flight from Dallas-Fort Worth, which will be starting, I think, in November. And also United is providing a second flight, daily flight from Denver. Those are great connection points. And also Alaska Airlines is providing a second flight, I think starting in December, to San Diego, which is a very popular destination. And also the travel to Seattle out of Monterey is still on tap for next February on Alaska. And this is all a consideration of the Airbus, which people frequently use to travel to San Jose International, their service has been suspended. So this takes some traffic off the roads and provides opportunities for travelers, the air travelers, to shorten their vehicle trips. And so we're very fortunate in that regard. Our traffic is at about 35% of where it was last year, which is consistent with the national averages for all airports. And so we're pleased with that. We're maintaining good service, and our inbound flights from particularly Dallas-Fort Worth are full. They're full every day, so we're doing well. And I encourage folks to, if they have to travel, use those flights to Dallas-Fort Worth and to Denver. We have a change in our restaurant at the airport. We're all very familiar with the Golden Tea, and as you may recall, last year Pepe, who's a well-known restaurateur in the Carmel area, took over operation of the Golden Tea, and they've decided to make a change, and we are going to have a new restaurateur there, Tim Cook, I think was with the Hyatt Corporation out of Carmel Valley Ranch. And that's going to start in November. And they're going to be providing outdoor dining as well as catering services out of the airport. So that's a good thing for our locals who use the facilities at the airport, as well as our travelers. And we approved appropriations for capital improvements on the sound system so that it's a little even more usable, and you don't have to guess what did they just say again. So we're upgrading our sound system for passenger announcements, and also This was something I pushed for to provide new flight information displays where you didn't need to get binoculars out to be able to read what was on the screen. So we're going to be upgrading the size and of the flight information displays at the airport to make it even more user friendly. So things are healthy at the airport, and we're very appreciative of being able to have an ex officio position on this board. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Sable. Thank you for all those good updates. It sounds like some good changes happening at the airport. We always love seeing good things happen at our favorite airport. Thank you. Let's go to Carl Sidorik, MST.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, a couple of things. October 5th, MST restored service on what a combination of what were our lines 48 and 46, which provided access from the Salinas Airport Center, LSL corridor, all the way through to the government services center for Monterey County. And that was important because that's when early voting issues started. So that we provided some access there for folks who depend on public transit to get to the ballot box. On top of that, on November 3rd, we will be providing free transit on all MST routes in support of people getting to the free ballots. And we're pushing that message out through press releases and social media, as well as during the early voting process. We are sending out information indicating where early voting ballot boxes are located and which routes serve those boxes, so that everyone who needs to use transit to get to their local voting locations can do so. We are in the final stages of our TIFIA loan to complete the financing of our South County facility in King City that is currently under construction. We've been working really closely with TAMC, legal staff and senior staff and your board to make this happen. We're planning to sign documents here shortly. We're getting very, very close, and we will be the second in the nation to have completed this process with the federal government to receive a 35-year fixed $8.5 million loan at 0.8% interest. I wish I could have got my house for something like that. But anyway, exciting to get that through. Don't want to jinx it, but we're very, very, very close. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Carl. And thank you again for always being ahead of the game and being a national leader, but certainly locally. I want to thank you when we have such an important election, our transit system, making it easy for local residents to go and exercise their fundamental right, guaranteed under our Constitution, to go out and vote. And local agencies working together to make it easy for local residents. I think that's truly commendable. And I really want to applaud you and all the team for working on making that happen. Let's go to Mr. Stedman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, members of the board. Got a number of items. First up, some really good news. I've been notified by the California Air Resources Board that we will be designated to non-attainment or to attainment of the state ambient air quality standard for ozone. This is based on data throughout our monitoring network, but in particular the Pinnacles National Park, which has been in violation in past years. So we're currently what's called transitional non-attainment, and we still have a lot of work to do to show that the wildfires actually did not, they're considered exceptional events and they did not contribute to the deterioration or the status change of our area. So we're waiting to get this in writing, but this is really good news for the region. And then as I usually do at each meeting, I remind everyone that we still have a electric vehicle incentive program. There was a lot of discussion about that earlier this morning. And I just wanted to remind people that we have processed over 100 applications, and a number of them have been low-income applications. About $200,000 has been expended. So we're almost halfway through, and this program started in August. So we also allow the purchase of used electric vehicles, which is kind of unique. So I encourage people to spread the word or to purchase or lease a vehicle yourself. And then also with respect to charging infrastructure for these vehicles, to date, the district has installed over 66 level 2 charging stations throughout our 3-county region. And we have an additional 6 DC fast chargers that we've also installed through our contractors. We're always looking for new shovel-ready projects. You know, planning's really great, but if you can't get the charging station installed, then all the planning in the world really doesn't matter, especially if it takes a number of years and the funds are tied up and stranded for projects. So our prioritization, although we developed a lot of plans, is those folks that are ready to go that may have infrastructure such as trenching or the electricity on site. They're given priority so that we can get these things installed in as least amount of time as possible. And then also, as was commented by earlier, we do have a diesel equipment and engine replacement program. And this year we're spending about $3 million in grant funds to change out dirty, inefficient vehicles and equipment within our 3-county jurisdiction. And these projects funded by Carl Moyer Community Air Protection Grant, NOx remediation, and state farmer grants include construction and agriculture vehicles and equipment and other devices. So we're still fighting the good fight out there and still bringing down emissions, not only CO2, but the motor vehicle is our #1 source of pollution in this jurisdiction. That and transport from our neighboring communities to the north and also in San Joaquin Valley. So this is really good news. We're seeing our air quality improve, and we hope to keep it that way in the coming years. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Stedman, for that report from the Air District. We have a question from Mary Adams.
Thank you very much, Richard. Can you just tell me, when does the electric vehicle incentive program end?
It ends when we run out of money. And typically, you know, interestingly enough, because there was some confusion with the Monterey Community Power, I think last year they launched a program and we had a program. We tried to launch them in concert, but there was some confusion. We actually didn't spend all our money down last year. So we rolled that money over into this year's program. We've been averaging about $400,000 a year. This year, we're around $500,000. And we've been doing this now, I think this is our 5th year, and we're averaging about 250 to 300 vehicles per year. So we've made a small dent. Certainly it's not anything that's gonna get us in compliance with the executive order for 2035, but we hope to work with other partners. I've talked to Debbie about some opportunities and work with Caltrans. We have the money. We'd like to get the vehicles and the charging stations out there as quickly as possible.
So if residents were interested in pursuing this program, can you just give me where can I find information that I could just direct them to?
So all the information on all our programs is on our website, which is our.org. And we're not giving out grants to individual homes right now. The charging stations I've talked to are for businesses and governmental entities. So those are for public use. We are looking at and speaking to, I guess it's called 3CE now, Monterey Community Power, formerly known as, about getting charging stations in people's homes. And we want to also look at doing some neighborhood charging stations. For instance, over in East Garrison, that seems like there may be an opportunity for a neighborhood or a community charging station. Instead of putting it in people's individual garages, we can maybe get a charging station set up in the neighborhood.
Good. Thank you for your help.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think another quick question from Carl.
Yeah, real quick. Do the funds only support outright purchases, or can they be used to support a lease?
So good question. And I assume you're talking about electric vehicles. They will support a lease or a purchase, and you can combine that with the California, the CVRP, and other tax incentives. And I understand PG&E also is giving money for these purchases or leases, in addition to money being made available for home charging stations. The only issue is for used vehicles, there's no lease opportunities, so you would have to do an outright purchase. But we would recommend, especially to low-income folks, that their price point on some of these, I'll use one vehicle in particular, the Leaf. Those are coming back, and you can get into a Leaf for less than $10,000. And the maintenance costs associated with the Leaf are, considerably less than a similar gas-powered vehicle. So as we develop more and more EV vehicles out there, we'll have more and more fleets of used vehicles, obviously, to draw from. So we see that as a good way to get people to buy in if they can't afford the initial cost. And then just lastly, I'll say that Tesla, of course, has announced that they hope to come out with a $25,000 electric vehicle that has really good range. So we're seeing prices come down, and there's some game changers on the horizon with respect to battery storage. So and battery technology. So we feel like we're on a pretty good trajectory right now, but the limiting resources, funding for these types of projects, and what we're putting together from the district's funds of $400,000 or $500,000 a year really needs to greatly grow if we're going to really make a significant dent in changing out vehicles.
Thank you, Mr. Stedman, for your report. I really appreciate it. We're going to keep this moving. We're going to go on to number 9, which is his reports on meetings attended by board members at TAMC expense, but I don't think there is any. So we're just going to now go to executive director's report. Debbie Hale.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to ask Mike Zeller to tee up a presentation on the awards, just to give you an understanding of our Transportation Excellence Awards are going to be at our January 27th meeting next year. This is our annual way to celebrate transportation accomplishments in the community. On the next slide, we'll just go through the slides here and show what the different awards categories are. So there's individual awards, and these are the awards from last year. Jennifer Klein, Big Sur Trail Volunteers. Next, please. There are innovative activities. We gave an award for the Ciclavia Gonzales, which is a new program, as well as the My Town Museum collaboration with the CSUMB and National Steinbeck Center. Next. Programs, MST Ride the 40s for Free program, and the MST Mobility Services Center, which we had a chance to visit actually on a TAMC field trip. Really excellent way to practice getting on the bus if you have mobility questions or if you've never ridden a bus before. Next. And then some of the projects that were really transformational, the Skyway Alisal Roundabout and the West Broadway transformation of the street there. Next. And then the county's Elkhorn Road storm damage repair and the River Road Arroyo Seco overlay, which had that very innovative full depth reclamation project. Next. And then the amazing video that we saw for the Highway 1 Cow Cliffs Viaduct project. Next. So there are projects all around the county that are deserving of attention and recognition. The nomination deadline is December 4th, 2020, and you'll find the awards forms available electronically, or you can download and print it at tamcmonterey.org. So please consider nominating a project from your jurisdiction for this great program. Thank you, Mike. And then I've got several other announcements, very brief. I've been having meetings with board members, and I really appreciate your input, and those are continuing. We've been talking about having a ribbon cutting for our Salinas Station project, which package 1, which is just about done, but it looks like that it's not quite going to be done until the holiday season. So we're going to be moving our ribbon cutting to January, and we'll give you a date at next board meeting. And it'll be a COVID sensitive event. So we'll only have a few people there, but we're exploring different ways that members can join in. Just for your information, the staff started the diversity training with the County of Monterey. We've got Friday mornings for 3 weeks in a row. And I just wanted to let you know it's been a great awareness raising, but also team building exercise as we've broken out into groups to discuss different ideas that were presented. And I encourage you, if you want to expand this to someplace in your jurisdiction, Juan Rodriguez and his team are very engaging, and really it's a 3-hour training, but it went by very quickly with all of the different breakouts and videos and discussions that happen. So I'm really pleased that we were able to set that up. And then finally, I'm going to go out on a limb here and share with you our new TAMC website that we bragged about. Oh, maybe Mike, you can share the new TAMC website. If you haven't been on it yet, it's got a new scroll with all of the photos of our top projects. It's also got our board meetings listed there in easy to read font. That's certainly an emphasis on the new ADA requirements. And we will, there we go. And oh yeah. And it emphasizes things like our programs and projects, Measure X, the rail extension projects, news and events, and also talks about our COVID protocol. It links you to the US 101 South of Salinas project, gets you to the cone zone report. And then if you scroll all the way to the bottom, we're meeting the requirements, of course, to have the current agenda for all of our committee and our board meetings on the front page of our website. This is a great opportunity for us to clean up old information. There's a lot buried into the website, and I encourage you, if you're looking for something, to check it out. We will also look into adding some key links for some of the great resources that our ex officio agencies mentioned today. So I believe that concludes my executive director's report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for Debbie from any of the board members on her report? Any members from the public? Okay, thank you, Debbie, for that. I think just as the last item of business on announcements, Robert, is Mr. Hewitt still with us? Robert, is this your last meeting with us? You're not running for re-election, so I wanted to just confirm whether this is your last meeting with us.
Well, I'm termed out. I will be, I believe I'll be at the TAMC Executive Committee meeting next week. And then what happens next? Let's see, we have a meeting in December, right? Early December, the 2nd of December. So I don't think our council will have installed the new members by that time. So you may have to put up with me one more time, Mr. Chairman.
All right, I just wanted to give you accolades if this was your last meeting, but if you got one more, we'll do it at our December meeting, because certainly you've been on our board for many years and a really dedicated service. So we wanted to make sure we give you props before you depart from a public office. So we'll save that for December. So thank you, Mr. Hewitt. Any other announcements by anyone else?
Thank you.
If not, last thing, everybody, even though I'm a Giants fan, last night was a great World Series, and it was good that I want to applaud if we have any Dodgers fans, but it was a great game, and I'll certainly root for California any day over Florida. So congratulations to the Dodgers on a good game last night. With that, we could adjourn our meeting. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Oh yeah, happy Thanksgiving. All right.
Thank you, everyone.
See you.